At the anniversary dinner, I knelt down to propose, but she laughed and ran away, leaving everyone stunned. I stood there holding the ring, while her heels clicked farther and farther into the night. They thought I would chase after her. I didn't. Instead, I made a choice that would change both our fates forever. The restaurant buzzed awkwardly around me. Some guests murmured in pity, others in disbelief. The air felt thicker with each passing second, as if everyone was waiting for me to bolt after her, to make a grand, desperate gesture. But I just stood up slowly, pocketed the ring, and gave a short nod to the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," I said calmly, and turned to leave without another word. Behind me, I heard the clatter of silverware and a few embarrassed coughs. The night air outside was sharp and cold. Good, I thought. Maybe it would freeze the part of me that still believed in fairy tales. At home, my mother was waiting, somehow already aware. She sat on the couch, clutching her phone like it might deliver better news if she shook it hard enough. When she saw my face, she sighed, a sound more tired than sad. I sat across from her, letting the silence stretch until it was almost comfortable. She finally broke it. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when one door closes, sometimes your mother kicks open a window." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh no, here it comes. Your Aunt Linda's friend's daughter just came back to town," she went on brightly. "You remember her, right? Vivian. Cute girl. Used to chase you around the playground with a stick." I chuckled despite myself. That did sound vaguely familiar. I think I still have a scar on my ankle. "Exactly," Mom said triumphantly. "True love leaves marks." She leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was sharing government secrets. "She's single, smart, working overseas in jewelry design, but back here for a bit. And," she poked my knee, "she agreed to meet you. Tomorrow. No pressure, of course. Total pressure." I shook my head, laughing a little. "Only you could turn a public humiliation into a networking opportunity." Mom shrugged, unbothered. "It's called efficiency. Waste not, want not." She pushed her phone toward me, already showing Vivian's photo. She was beautiful in an effortless way. No heavy makeup, no designer filters. Just a soft smile, eyes that seemed to actually see you. I looked at the screen longer than I intended. "Don't worry about Selena," Mom said, misreading my hesitation. "Some people are seasons. Maybe it was just her time to end." I leaned back, letting her words settle. Maybe she was right. Maybe chasing someone who ran at the first sign of seriousness wasn't love. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for people who only looked back to see if they were still being followed. Maybe it was time for something or someone new. The next day, I found myself standing outside a cozy little cafe, fiddling with the sleeves of my jacket like a teenager on his first date. The bell over the door jingled as I stepped inside, and there she was, Vivian, sitting by the window, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly, looking exactly like someone who didn't realize she was about to change someone else's life. She looked up and smiled when she saw me, a real smile that reached her eyes. "William," she said, standing to shake my hand like we were old colleagues meeting after years apart. I smiled back, feeling oddly at ease. "Hey, Vivian. It's been, wow, a long time." We sat down, and the conversation flowed easier than I expected. She teased me about the time I cried because she broke my favorite toy sword. I teased her about how she used to claim she was a fairy princess and demanded everyone address her as Your Majesty. We laughed more in that first hour than Selena and I had in the past year. When the waitress came by to take our order, Vivian smiled mischievously and said, "Do you still hate broccoli?" I blinked. "You remember that?" She grinned. "You launched an entire protest in kindergarten. Down with broccoli tyranny. You made signs and everything." I covered my face in mock embarrassment. "God, and you still agreed to come today?" She leaned forward slightly, chin resting on her hand. "I like rebels, especially the ones who know when it's time to start a new revolution." Something shifted quietly inside me at that moment. I wasn't just moving on from Selena. I was waking up from her. Vivian's presence was warm, steady, without the constant uncertainty that had followed Selena around like perfume. I didn't feel like I had to perform. I just had to be. When we parted ways that afternoon, she gave me a light wave and a cheerful, "See you soon," like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood there for a moment, watching her walk away, feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe years. That night, lying in bed, I stare at the ceiling, replaying every small moment from the cafe. The laughter, the ease, the way she listened, not just waited for her turn to speak. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like calling Selena. I didn't feel like checking if she had posted something cryptic on social media, hinting at regret, dangling hope like a baited hook. I felt free. The next morning, my mother caught me humming while pouring coffee. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "What's that?" I froze mid-pour. "What's what?" "That noise. That humming. You only hum when you're in love or when you find extra fries at the bottom of the bag." I shrugged, playing it cool. "Maybe both." She didn't press further, just smiled knowingly and went back to reading her magazine. But as I sipped my coffee, I knew something had shifted. I wasn't chasing anymore. I wasn't waiting. I was stepping forward. And somehow, deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. 2 days later, I found myself back at that same cafe, hands tucked awkwardly into my pockets. Vivian had messaged me. "Coffee again?" 2 words, nothing fancy. Yet they somehow felt warmer than all the novels Selena ever wrote in her captions about how busy she was. I pushed the door open and spotted her right away, sitting by the window again, sunlight catching the lighter streaks in her hair. She waved casually, like we did this every week, like this was already a rhythm between us. We talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her life abroad, the weird pastries she missed, the way she used to get homesick at the strangest moments, like when she saw a bag of old-fashioned candy or heard a cheesy pop song from our school days. I told her about work, about how the office coffee machine broke last month and half the team nearly rioted. We laughed until our sides hurt. It felt safe. Midway through her conversation, my phone buzzed. I peeked at it. Selena. Again. A simple hey. No apology, no context. Just a hook tossed into the water, hoping I was still swimming nearby. I locked my phone without answering. Vivian noticed, but didn't pry. Instead, she smiled kindly and asked if I wanted to go check out a nearby book fair. I nodded eagerly. Anywhere but here. Walking beside Vivian through rows of bookstalls, I realized something. With Selena, everything had always felt like a test I was doomed to fail. With Vivian, it felt like a conversation. No grades, no scorekeeping. We browsed through old novels and handmade bookmarks, laughing at some of the ridiculous cover art. I picked up a cookbook titled How to Burn Water and Other Kitchen Disasters and wiggled my eyebrows at her. She snorted. "Definitely your biography." I tucked the book under my arm. Might as well embrace destiny. At one booth, Vivian found a battered poetry book and opened it to a random page. She read a line softly, almost to herself. "If you love something, do not cage it. Stand back and watch it choose you." I looked at her, the book forgotten in my hands. She smiled without meeting my eyes. Sometimes, I thought, people say the most important things without even realizing. As the day ended, Vivian stretched her arms above her head, yawning. "This was nice," she said. "Feels like being a kid again, when everything was simple." I nodded, feeling a pang. It had been simple once. Before promises got broken. Before one laugh at a proposal shattered everything. As we walked back to the car, I noticed Vivian shiver slightly. Without thinking, I shrugged off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She looked up at me, surprised, then smiled so warmly it hit me like a punch to the chest. "Thank you," she murmured. I smiled back, heart thudding a little too loudly in my ears. Maybe it really could be simple again. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because of regret or sadness, but because a question kept spinning around my mind. Could I let myself be happy? Could I stop chasing a ghost and start building something real? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vivian smile under the streetlights, wearing my jacket like it belonged to her. A week later, Mike, my best friend, threw a casual house party. The usual faces showed up, loud, laughing, half-drunk and already by 8 p.m. I was nursing a soda when the room quieted briefly. Selena had walked in. She wore a slinky black dress, hair cascading down her shoulders, smile practiced and perfect. She caught my eye across the room and started walking toward me. Mike nudged me under his breath. "Trouble, 2 o'clock. Selena stopped in front of me, tilting her head slightly. "William," she said sweetly. Long time no see. I nodded politely. Yeah, how have you been? Good, she said, drawing out the word like it tasted expensive. She toyed with a bracelet on her wrist, the way she always did when she was pretending to be casual. Heard you been busy. Just living, I said simply. Her smile tightened for a fraction of a second before smoothing out. Living with someone special? I sipped my drink. Not yet. Maybe soon. Selena's laugh was soft, almost disbelieving. You don't move on that fast, William. You were always loyal. I shrugged. Maybe I finally learned to be loyal to myself first. She blinked, thrown off balance. For the first time, I realized how much power I'd always given her, just by hoping she would care enough to stay. I wasn't that man anymore. Vivian arrived 20 minutes later, wearing jeans and a simple white sweater, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like she belonged in every room she entered without even trying. She waved at me and Mike, and my heart lifted without permission. Mike grinned when he caught me staring. If you don't lock that down, he said in my ear, you're the biggest fool on this side of town. Selena saw her too. I could feel her gaze, sharp and assessing. She walked away without another word, disappearing into the party crowd like smoke. Vivian flopped down beside me on the couch, grinning. Someone spiked the punch again. I watched 3 people argue over who did it. I chuckled. Every party. Tradition. We spent the night laughing at dumb jokes, playing a terrible game of charades, and arguing over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It felt easy. Safe. Right? When I dropped Vivian off at her place, she paused before getting out of the car. Tonight was fun, she said softly. You're good company. Better than most people deserve. I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat. Good night, Vivian. She smiled, shutting the door gently. I watched her walk to her building, jacket still slightly too big on her, and realized something deep and certain. I didn't miss Selena tonight. Not even once. Not even when she tried. Not even when she smiled. Not even when she stood 2 feet away. Selena was my past. Vivian might just be my future. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cool night air wash over me, feeling more alive than I had in years. Tomorrow, I thought, maybe I'll call Vivian first instead of waiting. Tomorrow, maybe I'll finally start choosing myself, and whoever chooses me back. The next few days were oddly quiet. I expected another random message from Selena, maybe another casual attempt to slip back into my life like nothing had happened. But there was nothing, not a word. I told myself it was better this way, but somewhere deep inside, a small, uneasy knot had started to form. People like Selena didn't just disappear. They regrouped. I tried to focus on better things. Like Vivian, she messaged me late one evening. Want to help me pick paint color for my new office? Of course. She was moving back for a while. Something about starting a local branch of her jewelry business. A permanent place. I jumped at the chance, telling myself it was just to help a friend, but my heart knew better. When I met Vivian at the hardware store, she was already in the paint aisle, frowning seriously at 2 nearly identical shades of beige. She looked up when she saw me, rolling her eyes dramatically. Beige number 1 or beige number 2, she said, holding up the sample cards. Life or death situation here. I grinned. Clearly, you called the right guy. We spent the next hour arguing the artistic merits of eggshell versus antique white, with Vivian accusing me of having no soul for choosing the lighter shade. I accused her of planning to live in a potato sack if her office ended up that drab. Our laughter echoed down the aisle, drawing a few strange looks from other shoppers. For once, I didn't care. Afterward, we grabbed coffee at a small place nearby. Vivian tucked her knees up on her chair, hands wrapped around her cup. It was a cozy, unguarded posture, the kind people used when they felt safe. She talked about her dreams, not just jewelry, but traveling, opening a workshop, maybe teaching someday. Listening to her, I realized how little Selena had ever shared about her own dreams. Our conversations had always been about parties, vacations, social media appearances. Never anything real. You're amazing, I said without thinking. Vivian blinked, surprised. Then her cheeks flushed lightly. You're not so bad yourself, William. My phone buzzed again. A message. I glanced at it under the table. Selena, thinking about you. Can we meet? The knot in my chest tightened. Vivian noticed my pause. Bad news? She asked lightly. I shook my head. Just noise. She smiled, not pressing further, and somehow that made me want to tell her everything. But not yet. Not now. I needed to be sure first of myself, of what I wanted. That night, lying in bed, I thought about what Selena had said. Thinking about me. Funny how people only seem to think about you when they sense they were losing you. The next day, Mike hosted a barbecue. A casual get-together for the old gang. I debated skipping it, but decided against it. No running away anymore. I was done with that. When I arrived, the backyard was already full. Music playing, kids chasing each other, the smell of grilled food in the air. I spotted Vivian immediately, sitting with a few friends, laughing at something. She wore a simple sundress, hair pinned back lazily, and yet somehow she looked more radiant than anyone there. I made my way toward her when I heard my name. William. I turned. Selena stood a few feet away, holding 2 drinks, one of which she offered toward me. Her smile was careful, almost nervous. Hi, she said. It's been a while. I nodded. It has. She hesitated, then plunged ahead. I was hoping we could talk. I glanced toward Vivian, who was now distracted by Mike's wife showing her pictures on her phone. Good. She hadn't seen yet. I sighed and followed Selena a few steps away, out of earshot. She handed me a drink, but I didn't take it. She withdrew it awkwardly. Listen, William, she said, voice softer. I was stupid. I panicked that night. I didn't mean to humiliate you. I was scared. Of commitment. Of messing it all up. I stayed silent, watching her fidget with the hem of her dress. You were always so good to me, she continued, voice shaking a little. And I took that for granted. I thought you'd always be there. And when I wasn't, I asked quietly. She flinched at my tone, but pressed on. I miss you. I miss us. I want to fix things. I closed my eyes for a second, gathering strength. A few months ago, this moment would have been everything I dreamed of. Now it just made me tired. I opened my eyes and spoke calmly. Selena, you don't miss me. You miss the idea of me. The safety. The fallback. You don't get to come back now, just because you realize someone else might see my worth. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I appreciate you being honest, I added. But I'm not the same person who stood there holding a ring while you laughed and walked away. Behind me, I sensed movement, Vivian standing up, probably looking for me. I turned slightly to block Selena's view. I have someone now, I said firmly. Someone who didn't need to lose me to know my value. Selena's eyes filled with tears, but she forced a smile. I understand, she whispered. Goodbye, William. Goodbye, Selena. She walked away, and this time, I didn't feel the urge to chase after her. I felt free. I turned back toward the party. Vivian caught my eye, tilting her head in question. I smiled and walked toward her. She smiled back, easily, naturally, as if no storm had ever touched her shore. I spent the rest of the afternoon by Vivian's side, talking, laughing, living. Later that night, when we sat together watching the sunset, she asked quietly, was that closure? I nodded. Yeah, it was. She sipped her drink, thoughtful. I'm glad you got it. I reached over and took her hand. Warm, steady, real. Me too, I said. And I meant every word. It was some time after that barbecue that I knew. Not guessed. Not hoped. I knew. Vivian wasn't just someone I liked. She wasn't just a rebound or a friend I happened to laugh with. She was the person I wanted to walk into every room with, sit across every dinner table with, and wake up beside every morning. And somehow, the idea didn't scare me. It felt like standing on solid ground after a lifetime of drifting. I spent a week secretly planning, checking ring designs, talking to Mike about locations, even texting Vivian's mom under the radar, asking which flowers Vivian had liked since childhood. I got a surprisingly enthusiastic response. White camellias and blue hydrangeas, plus a 300-word note about her favorite desserts. I want it perfect, not flashy, not viral, not some viral stunt. I wanted it real, honest, ours. Meanwhile, Selena was still lingering on the edges. I'd get occasional messages. Hope you're well. Just heard this song and thought of you. Funny how life works, huh? Always harmless enough to ignore, but just sharp enough to sting a little. She wasn't giving up quietly, and if I was honest, a part of me hated that small ache she could still trigger with a few typed words. But every time I doubted, every time old wounds started to itch, I thought about Vivian's quiet smiles. The way she listened without needing to fix me. The way she celebrated even my smallest victories like they were gold medals. One evening, a week before my planned proposal, Mike threw another little gathering, just because party, he called it. I knew Selena would be there. She was part of the old group, and Mike wasn't about to start issuing loyalty tests. Still, I decided to go. I wasn't hiding anymore. Vivian arrived with me. Hand in mine. Simple, natural, strong. Selena spotted us almost immediately. I saw her blink, saw the smile falter just a fraction before she smoothed it back into place. She walked over, wine glass in hand, looking polished and casual. "Hey, William," she said lightly. "And Vivian, you look cozy." Vivian smiled politely. "We are." I felt her fingers tighten around mine slightly. Not possessive, just grounded. I squeezed back. Selena laughed softly, a sound too sharp around the edges. "Well, I guess congratulations are in order. Moving fast, aren't you?" Before I could answer, Vivian spoke, her voice sweet but unmistakably firm. Sometimes the right thing doesn't need a long story. Sometimes you just know. Selena's lips pressed into a thin line. She raised her glass in a mock toast and turned away, disappearing into the swirling crowd. Vivian looked up at me. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I said honestly. And I was. The night ended quietly. No drama. No scenes. Just me and Vivian, driving home in silence, her hand resting lightly on my knee, like a promise she didn't need to say out loud. The next few days passed in a blur. Ring finalized. Dinner reservation made. Flowers arranged. My nerves were a different story. Every time I thought about dropping to one knee again, my heart sped up, not from fear of rejection, but from the sheer weight of wanting it to go right. The morning of the big night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the tiny velvet box. I thought about the last time I'd held a box like this. I thought about the sound of Selena's laughter echoing through the restaurant. And I thought about how different this felt. No fear, just hope. Mid-afternoon, as I was getting ready, my phone buzzed. Selena again. One message. "Are you free tonight? Really need to talk." I stared at it for a long minute. Not angry, not tempted, just sad in a detached kind of way. I didn't reply. Instead, I pocketed the ring and left the house. At the restaurant, everything was set. Candles, music low and steady. A small corner table near the window where the city lights blurred like stars. Vivian arrived, wearing a simple navy blue dress that somehow made her eyes even brighter. She looked around, slightly suspicious. "This is fancy," she teased. "Planning something?" "Maybe," I said, grinning. We ordered, talked, laughed. I watched her carefully, the way she twirled her fork absently when she was deep in thought, the way she tilted her head slightly when she listened. Little things that felt suddenly enormous, like memories I didn't even know I'd been waiting to make. As dessert came out, I took a deep breath, reached into my pocket. Vivian froze when she saw the box. Her eyes widened slightly, and her breath hitched. I stood, moving around her side of the table, heart pounding. "Vivian," I began, voice trembling only a little. I never knew what it was supposed to feel like. I thought love was chasing someone who kept running. I thought love was proving yourself over and over. But with you, it's just home. It's just right. I knelt. Again, but this time with no fear at all. Just joy. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, the world held its breath. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes, but her smile broke through first, radiant and sure. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Applause broke out in the restaurant. I barely heard it. I was too busy slipping the ring onto her shaking finger and pulling her into a kiss that tasted like promises kept. As we sat back down, grinning like idiots, I caught sight of my phone lighting up on the table. Another message from Selena. I didn't even bother to open it. Some chapters aren't meant to be rewritten. Some are just meant to be closed, quietly, finally, and forever. And some, the best ones, are just beginning. We stayed at the restaurant long after the plates were cleared, just sitting there, talking and laughing like kids who had stumbled into the best secret of the universe. Vivian kept glancing at the ring on her finger, a small, odd smile tugging at her lips every time she caught sight of it. I had never seen anyone look so quietly, genuinely happy. It was the kind of happiness that didn't need an audience, that didn't need to be paraded or proven. It simply was. Mike had been dying for an update, so before leaving, I sent him a blurry selfie of us, Vivian's hand lifted proudly to show the ring, both of us grinning like fools. Within seconds, his reply buzzed back, "About damn time." As we left the restaurant, Vivian squeezed my hand. "We're now fiancé." "Home," I said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Then tomorrow, we tell everyone." She laughed. "You're underestimating my mother. She probably already knows." We were halfway across the parking lot when I heard it. A voice. Sharp. Panicked. "William." I turned. There, standing under the buzzing yellow light of the restaurant entrance, was Selena. She looked wrong. Still beautiful in that effortless, polished way. But there was something unsteady about her now. Her hair was too perfect, her smile too wide, her eyes wild around the edges. "William," she called again, starting toward us. Vivian stopped, her fingers tightening slightly around mine. I could feel her preparing to let go, to step aside gracefully if needed, because that's who she was. But I squeezed back firmly. "Stay," I murmured. Selena reached us, heels clicking furiously across the pavement. She stopped a few feet away, breathing hard like she'd run a marathon she wasn't trained for. "Please," she said, voice breaking a little. "Just hear me out." I stayed silent. Selena's hands fluttered helplessly at her sides before she reached into her purse and pulled out something small and glittering. A ring. Not just any ring. The one I had once shown her in a jewelry store window, joking, maybe someday. The one she had laughed off with a careless toss of her hair. Now, she held it out toward me like a peace offering or maybe a desperate bribe. "I bought it," she said, voice shaking. "I bought it for you. I'm sorry I ran away. I was scared. I thought I had all the time in the world. But I don't. I realize now it was always you." Beside me, Vivian stood very still, the quiet steadiness of her presence grounding me more than any loud declaration ever could. Selena's lip trembled. "Please, William, please give me another chance. I'm ready now. I'll marry you. Tonight. Tomorrow. Whenever you want. Just please." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but a deep, aching sadness. Not anger, not temptation, just a hollow sadness of watching someone realize too late what they lost. "Selena," I said quietly, "there was a time I would have given anything to hear you say that." She smiled in hope, a glimmer of triumph flashing across her face. "But that time is gone," I continued gently. "And I'm glad it's gone, because otherwise I would have missed this." I gestured to Vivian, the real thing, the right thing. Selena's smile cracked like thin ice under a heavy boot. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I do." She shook her head, still clutching the ring like it might somehow change the outcome. "William, don't throw us away. Think about everything we've been through." "I have," I said, "and that's exactly why I'm not going back." Selena's face crumpled. For a second, I thought she might throw the ring at me. Instead, she closed her fist around it and took a stumbling step back. "I hope she makes you happy," she choked out. "Really happy. Because if she doesn't..." Her voice faltered. "I will," Vivian said simply, her voice clear and unwavering. I turned to Vivian, my heart aching with how much I loved her in that moment. Not because she fought for me with flashy gestures, but because she fought by staying. Selena wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand, squared her shoulders, and walked away. Not running this time. Not laughing. Just leaving. Vivian turned to me, searching my face. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm now." We walked to my car together. No rush. No looking back. Inside, I sat behind the wheel for a moment, just breathing. Vivian reached over, brushing her fingers lightly across my knuckles. "You did the right thing," she said. I smiled, half sad, half relieved. "I know. It just took me a while to learn how to stop begging people to choose me." "You don't have to beg," Vivian said quietly. "Not with me." I looked at her, really looked, and realized she meant it. There was no competition here. No race to win. No games to play. Just love. Simple. Steady. Enough. Let's go home, I said. And for the first time in years, the word home didn't feel like a place I was trying to find. It felt like something I had built step by step without even realizing. And this time, I wasn't building it alone. The next few days were strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, there were no late-night battles with myself, no wondering what I could have done differently, no silent wars between hope and pride. Just quiet mornings with coffee, planning the future with Vivian, talking about things that used to feel like distant dreams, buying a house, setting up her jewelry workshop, maybe even taking a long overdue vacation once everything's settled. It was a life built not on chasing someone, but on standing together. And it felt unbelievably good. Mom, of course, was practically vibrating with excitement. She called daily, throwing out suggestions for engagement parties, wedding venues, guest lists longer than a small country census. I half-joked that she'd already picked out names for hypothetical grandkids. You think I'm joking? She laughed once. I've had names ready since you were 16. Get moving. Vivian took it all in stride, which only made my family love her more. She had a way of diffusing Mom's hyper-energy with a smile and a calm, graceful patience that somehow made everything seem manageable. It was hard to imagine anyone not falling a little in love with her once they got to know her, which, of course, made what happened next even more frustrating. It started with whispers. At first, I ignored them. Selena had been quiet after that night in the parking lot. Painfully, suspiciously quiet. But gossip has a way of finding cracks, especially when people are bored and looking for a story. I heard through Mike first. Bro, he said hesitantly over the phone, you know Selena's been saying things? I gritted my teeth. What kind of things? Just that maybe you proposed to Vivian on the rebound. That maybe you're rushing because you're hurt, not because you're in love. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was disappointment. Selena could have walked away gracefully. She could have let it go. But instead, she chose sabotage. Thanks for the heads up, I said. I'll handle it. And I thought that would be the end of it. But I underestimated her desperation. It was during a family dinner. Not as big as the engagement party had been, but still important when it happened. Vivian and I arrived hand in hand. Mom hugged us both enthusiastically. Grandpa gave me a rare, approving nod. Even the cousins who normally lived to tease me about everything kept their comments to a respectful minimum. It was shaping up to be a good night, until halfway through dinner when the door swung open and Selena walked in. The room froze. She wasn't disheveled or crying. No, she looked perfect, polished, composed, wearing a slim black dress, hair shining, smile serene, like she belonged here. Like she hadn't already shattered everything once before. I stood up immediately, heart thudding painfully. Vivian rose beside me, calm but alert, like she already sensed a storm was brewing. Selena walked toward us, ignoring the stares and whispers. Good evening, everyone, she said brightly. Sorry I'm late. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Mom glanced between me and Selena, clearly confused and horrified. Grandpa frowned, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. Selena stopped a few feet from our table and looked straight at me. William, can we talk? She asked sweetly. Vivian's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. A simple reminder, I wasn't alone. I smiled, genuinely, and shook my head. No, Selena, we don't have anything left to talk about. A few gasps echoed around the room. This was not going the way she expected. Her smile faltered. William, please. Just 5 minutes. For old time's sake. I straightened up, speaking loudly enough for the whole room to hear. Selena, I wish you nothing but happiness. But whatever we had into the night, you laughed and walked away. I moved on, and you should too. A stunned silence followed. Selena's face turned pale. For a moment, she looked like she might argue, fight, plead. But then she saw Vivian, standing quietly, steady, certain. Selena swallowed hard. Her pride, what little she had left, forced her to turn and walk away. She didn't storm out. She didn't cry. She didn't make a scene. She just left. This time, truly and completely. The door clicked shut behind her, and a collective breath was released around the room. Mom quickly jumped in to salvage the mood, raising her glass with a bright smile. To new beginnings, she said firmly. To new beginnings, everyone echoed. I turned to Vivian, who was watching me with something soft and unreadable in her eyes. Are you okay? I asked quietly. She smiled, that slow, beautiful smile that always seemed to light up the darkest corners of me. Better than okay, she said, and I believed her. We spent the rest of the night surrounded by laughter, food, and family. Real family. The kind that didn't run away when things got hard. Later, as we drove home, Vivian reached over and tangled her fingers with mine. You know, she said teasingly, I'm starting to think drama just follows you around. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe, but I'm done starring in it. Good, she said, resting her head lightly against my shoulder. Because I like the quiet life with you. Me too, I said, more than anything. And this time, I meant it with every fiber of my being. A few days after the family dinner, I thought the storms had finally passed. Life felt steady again. Vivian and I spent lazy mornings planning wedding details, simple things we both cared about, not grand performances for social media. Our evenings were filled with quiet walks, favorite takeout meals, and arguments about whether to paint the kitchen blue or green. It was the kind of simple, stubborn happiness I never thought I'd find. Not because life got easier, but because I finally stopped begging it to be something it wasn't. And then Selena showed up one last time. It was raining when I found her outside my building, sitting on the steps like some ghost from another life. No umbrella, no coat, just her, hunched against the cold, arms wrapped around herself. I stood there for a long moment, heart sinking, not with love, not even with anger, just pity. Selena looked up when she heard my footsteps. Her makeup was smudged from the rain, but she didn't seem to notice or care. William, she said softly, voice raw, can I just talk to you? Just once. Please. I hesitated, every instinct screaming to walk past her. But some memories, no matter how bruised, still deserved to be put down gently. I sat a few steps above her, keeping space between us. She laughed a little, a broken sound. Look at us. Remember when we thought we'd conquer the world together? I stayed silent. She wiped her face roughly. I don't blame you, she said. I don't blame you for hating me. I hate me too sometimes. I don't hate you, I said quietly. She blinked at me. I just don't love you anymore. Selena bit her lip so hard I thought she'd draw blood. She nodded, accepting the words like punches she knew she deserved. I was scared, she whispered, of failing, of being stuck, of not being enough. I stared out into the rain-soaked street. We were both different people now, shaped by wounds we had given each other. You were enough, I said. You just didn't know it. And I couldn't spend my life trying to convince you. A fresh tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't try to wipe it away this time. I'm sorry, William, she said. For everything. I nodded, feeling the last pieces of our old story finally crumble into dust. Me too, I said. We sat there in the rain a little longer, two ghosts saying goodbye without touching. Finally, Selena stood up. She looked at me with a sad smile, a real one this time, not the plastic one she wore at parties. Be happy, she said. You too, I replied. And with that, she turned and walked away into the night. No running, no looking back, just a quiet, final ending. I watched her until she disappeared around the corner, the rain swallowing her whole. Then I stood up, wiped my face, rain or tears, it didn't matter, and went inside. Vivian was curled up on the couch, a blanket around her, scrolling on her phone. She looked up as I entered, her face lighting up instinctively just because I was there. Home, I thought again. I had finally found it. Without a word, I walked over, pulled her into my arms, and just held her. Vivian didn't ask questions. She didn't need explanations. She just hugged me tighter, her head resting against my chest, her heartbeat syncing with mine. You're drenched, she mumbled into my shirt. I'm fine, I said. And for the first time in years, I really meant it. We sat there like that for a long time, wrapped in the simple miracle of being chosen. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, but out of love. Later that night, as we lay side by side, Vivian traced idle patterns on my hand. You okay? She asked again, softer. I kissed the top of her head. I'm better than okay. She smiled, and in the dim light, I saw the glint of her engagement ring. "You ever wonder," she said, "how different life would have been if things went the other way?" Sometimes, I admitted, but not in a way that makes me want to change anything. Vivian nodded, her hair brushing against my shoulder. Me neither. The next morning, I found a note stuck to the fridge. Vivian's handwriting, loopy and sure. "Thank you for choosing me, but more importantly, thank you for choosing yourself first." I stood there, smiling like an idiot for a long time before tucking the note safely into my wallet. A small reminder that the best love stories aren't about chasing someone until they love you back. They're about two people walking toward each other, with open eyes, open hearts, and no unfinished business trailing behind. And for the first time, I wasn't chasing anyone. I was walking forward, right where I belonged. A week later, Vivian and I stood together under a canopy of soft lights, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. No crowds of strangers, no borrowed grandeur, just family, friends, and the steady, certain beat of something real. The engagement party wasn't extravagant. It wasn't supposed to be. It was held in my parents' backyard, where the grass was a little patchy and the folding chairs didn't match, but nobody cared. Laughter floated through the air. Plates clattered. Children darted around with frosting-stained mouths. Vivian wore a simple white dress, hair tucked behind her ear with a tiny sprig of baby's breath tucked into it. When she smiled at me, it felt like the world shrank to just the two of us. I couldn't stop staring at her. Mike slapped my back at one point and whispered, "You're grinning like you won the lottery." I chuckled. I did. Across the lawn, I spotted Mom wiping away a few tears discreetly with a napkin, pretending to check the buffet table. Grandpa was deep in conversation with Vivian's father, arguing good-naturedly about fishing or politics. I couldn't tell which. It was messy, loud, a little chaotic. It was perfect. Vivian squeezed my hand as we wandered between tables, thanking everyone who showed up. When we reached a small group gathered around the cake, someone called for a toast. I hadn't prepared anything. For once, I didn't need to. I raised my glass, feeling the weight of the moment settle into something solid and sure. "Thank you," I said, voice steady, "not just for being here tonight, but for believing in second chances. For reminding me that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about showing up. Every day, especially when it's hard." I turned to Vivian, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. "And thank you," I added, "for showing me that real love isn't about chasing. It's about choosing and being chosen." Vivian's eyes shone with unshed tears, her smile trembling in the best way. "To new beginnings," I finished, lifting my glass. "To new beginnings," everyone echoed. We clinked glasses, laughter and cheers rising into the warm evening air. Later, as the sun dipped low and the backyard was bathed in gold, Vivian and I stole away to the quieter edge of the garden. We sat on the old wooden swing, the one I used to climb as a kid. The chains creaked softly under our combined weight. Vivian leaned her head against my shoulder. "Tired?" I teased. "Happy," she said simply. I wrapped an arm around her, rocking us gently back and forth. "You know," I said after a while, "I used to think the best moments in life would be loud. Huge, like fireworks." She smiled without opening her eyes. "And now I think they sound like this." I tightened my arm around her. "Like quiet nights. Like peace." Vivian tilted her head up to look at me, eyes full of something deep and endless. "I love you, William," she said. The words didn't catch me off guard the way they might have once. They didn't terrify me. They didn't make me question my worth. They just felt right. "I love you too, Vivian," I said easily, truthfully. She grinned and poked my side lightly. "Took you long enough to figure it out." I laughed, catching her hand and kissing her knuckles. "Better late than never," I said. The night wore on, the sky turning velvet dark, dotted with stars. Music drifted from the house, someone playing an old love song off their phone. Vivian stood, reaching for my hand. "Dance with me? Here?" I glanced around the uneven grass and chuckled. She pulled me to my feet anyway. Here's the thing about love. It doesn't care where you are. It doesn't care if the ground's a little bumpy or the music's a little scratchy. It just asks if you're willing to show up. if you're willing to say yes. So I said yes. We danced barefoot under the stars, twirling clumsily but laughing so hard it didn't matter. Vivian spun away and then back into my arms, breathless with laughter, eyes sparkling like 1,000 quiet galaxies. For a long moment, I just held her there. The past felt distant now, like a book I had closed carefully and placed back on a high shelf. Still part of my story, but no longer part of my future. Selena was a chapter, a lesson. Vivian was the beginning of the rest of the book. When we finally stopped dancing, Vivian tucked herself against me, both of us slightly breathless. "Promise me something," she said against my chest. "Anything," I said. "No more looking back," she whispered. "No more second-guessing." I kissed the top of her head. "Only forward," I promised. "Only with you." And under the endless, forgiving sky, we sealed that promise. Not with a ring, not with a kiss, but with something far stronger. Hope. Hope that this time, the story wouldn't be about chasing or fixing or waiting. It would be about choosing. Every day, in every way. And for the first time, I knew without a doubt. This was the story I was always meant to live.